Bloody hell, I had a day. I've been doing a tarot reading, McDonald's Psychic tarot readings, Chris.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how you do it to yourself.
Email. Well, I've been trying the method that Paul was doing, because obviously he did that video for us, and I thought, oh, I need to give this more of a go, because I was making progress at one point, and then I don't really use tarot that much, so I thought, I've got some afternoon, I can either read a massive book on chemical compounds, or I can mess about with the tarot cards. And I thought, seeing as the tarot cards are right there, I mess about with the tarot cards. So I went for that idea. Anyway, so today we're talking about being a bad witch, I think, aren't we?
Bad
right?
witch.
Being a bad witch.
Yeah, I think so. Something like that.
What the description was for this, because I'm such a bad witch. Dear, what today's episode was about. That's what happens when I'm organized and I write the descriptions and stuff a week before. Here we go, Chris. You hear a lot about people thinking they're cursed or that some person has put a spell on them. They come into contact with fix such conditions. But today we're going to talk about poor unfortunates who have been spelled, or the goody-goody witches and magical practitioners who fix their conditions. Instead, what we're actually going to talk about is the people who cause the trouble in the first place. And how you...
We should have called this episode Poor Unfortunate Souls.
I think that's a podcast episode, isn't it? Poor Unfortunate Souls.
Oh, yeah, possibly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's on that list. It's not on the Fausty Witches list. So...
Oh, okay.
So what are we going to do? Are we going to talk about maladies and problems that you can cause and then not give a solution to it? So are we going to give the poison without the antidote today? Because that sounds like something. That definitely sounds like the sort of moral, upstanding magical practitioners Fausty we are. Behavior. To dish out and set a load of people off on weapons with poisons with no idea how to fix the issues.
Yeah. Have you seen the message from Michelle? She says you look horny.
Michelle. She says I look horny. Liam says he's a bad witch as is sitting in front of something on his wall that could... Oh, yeah, so that's that. Yes, I do get it now. I was thinking maybe look like an alien, but... You know, I'm not that green.
Yeah, they do look like antennae. You look like an ant.
So it looks a bit more like that. I don't know. I need to prop this up. So, Chris, right? If you're someone that has never cast a spell or done any form of magic before whatsoever, okay, so we're talking about the most mundane of mundanes. What is the easiest magical thing you can do to mess someone up in a minor way? So we're kind of talking causing a trouble. Okay. We're not trying to do some magical murdering. We'll wait till a bit further into the podcast to discuss that.
Okay. We talk about murder later.
What's the simplest thing?
Okay. Give me a second because I have to remember how to do the simple stuff. Because I normally go straight to the murdering.
Yes, you do.
The simple stuff. Oh, you mean when you talk about your hexes and your punches in the face?
I thought it was all about the evil eye, wasn't it? Which is my evil eye? Is it my left or my right?
I don't know. You're just evil in general, so both. Okay.
No, because it's an evil eye, and it's one. It's not plural. I presume I've
got evil eyes.
Good eye.
Nah.
Which is my good side?
You're showing the wrong end.
Must be the bad side, mustn't
that? Sorry. You asked a serious question and I didn't give you an answer. Yeah, or I suppose, evil is probably a good place to start. it's almost like you planned it, Liam. So yeah, evil eye is probably a really good place to start. This idea of well, those are hexes at best, aren't they? These are befalling of ill will. That idea that all you have to do is connect. Huh?
I don't know. I always say, because I like to, you know, my brain, engineering kind of brain, likes to put things out perfectly, kind of ducks in a row. So I like to go up the level. So I'm like, jinx, that's misfortune, you know. Hex, that's like punching someone. And then a curse.
Okay.
That's basically like making someone go down with something that's worse than death, essentially, and making all their kids and grandkids go down with it as well. Often, if you're being traditional. Okay. I'm not traditional, so I don't do such things. I'm very forgiving because I won't curse the rest of your family. I just curse you.
Yeah. I don't know. I still like stealing the firstborn, but again, we're going further down the story. We're supposed to be talking about, okay, so you want jinxes first, yes?
You broke up a bit.
Is that what we're saying?
But if you're saying I want the basics, because I'm imagining a mundane person sat at home that are like, great, that cow I work with, I'm going to do something. I don't yet know what I'm going to do because Liam and Chris have told me, but I am going to do something. And I'm going to learn what I'm going to do by the end of this Fausty Witches Show. So, Chris, what's the most simplest thing they can do? And don't tell them to make a fucking charm bag.
No, I'm not. The jinxes don't start that far long. Those are when we get on to the other stuff. With the jinxes, all it needs is to package up. It's all about the intention, Liam. It's packing up. Is packing up loose power and throwing at somebody. So that you just need to, you know, dig deep, use all the hatred you've got in that moment and direct it at a body part. That's how I like the jinxes. They're kind of, you're going to fall over in front of that car jet, are we? You're going to trip all day. So, you know, you put the concept of the sticking or the trip hazard that person's going to constantly trip over for the whole of that day. Those sorts of things are the sorts of ones I would start with. So those are pure energy works.
So you're imagining the thing that you want to happen to them.
Yeah. And then using the power of anger to throw it at them.
Right. But this
anger, annoyance.
If I get the AA battery or the AAA battery, and I throw that energy, I get in trouble with the police for that because that's a physical object.
I didn't say throw nothing about throwing batteries.
Come on, tell us about.
We've covered it. We've covered energy manipulation in this before, surely.
Yeah, I know, but this is a new episode. So,
you
know, we're talking about like, making it super simple. Chris, the world is too nice, Chris. We need to do something about this. I think the best thing we can do is take the American approach and to give every child and teacher and person a gun. That's what we need to do. We can't do that in the UK, so we'll do the next best thing, which is to give them the ability to hex and curse random people for no apparent reason. Okay? Because that's bound to fix our problems. I mean, it works so well for the Americans that it's bound to fix the problems over here. I mean, if you don't like our Boris Johnson, you're just a hex, don't you? Right? If you don't like old Kathy in work, you just hex her, don't you? Old Kathy in work is not the same as the Kathy that's in the chat, so don't hex the Kathy that's in the chat. In fact, Kathy in the chat actually has a question. Kathy in the chat says, oh, is it coming up? Is there a ceremony to do for hexes? You could create a ceremony. My idea of ceremony, much like ritual, is something that you do again and again You know, like morning ritual, me brushing me teeth. I do that twice a day, right? So if there's a way I really love hexing and a cursing, then I might turn that into kind of like a ceremony, you know, because I might like to take that approach, and it might become something that I repeat for people. But do you need to do a ceremony to hex someone? No, I think what, Chris, you were talking about was something a bit more simple than that, weren't you?
Yeah, so what we're talking in the basic kind of jinx point, so hexes and curses, but the basic jinx, so going on Liam's levels of severity, what we're doing there is anything that is normally to cause, you know, I can't even think the word I want, to cause a short-term effect, that is an annoyance of some description. So we're not talking yet about causing any kind of harm. We're talking,
No,
and that might be this might be as simple as imagining. Okay. I don't know why I said it that way, but yeah, is that kind of manifesting a stone in someone's shoe, you know, something that will, regardless of times they tap the shoe out, they're never going to get rid of it because it's not there. So with that, what you're essentially doing is pushing an image of something that you want to happen and manifesting it, so that there is no rock. You are not creating something out of nothing. You're creating the illusion of something. Because let's face it, people are stupid. So all you need to do is kind of put an impression onto somebody. So those kind of basic parts are your kind of jinxes. That's when you're kind of, you know, making someone continuously sneeze for the whole day. These are the kind of, yeah, there you go. Kathy's put it on there. An unpleasant, probably not, but yes, it's going to be some kind of annoying, you know, unpleasant, irritating. Those are your jinxes. Those are the sorts of level that you're talking. Don't require a lot of energy. They aren't designed to last. You know, something lasting more than more than a few hours. You're not going to need to raise. This is the sort of magic that happens as instinct. It is something that you do without real thought. It is kind of, you know, when you get someone cuts you up on your way to work and you start swearing at them and flipping them the V's. In those sorts of that's the sort of level of energy we're talking about. That kind of little pocket of energy that you're then directing at somebody. So rather than swearing, you bottle all that energy out and release it in direct with the evil eye straight through. Is essentially
like
what you're doing.
Scalpel.
Like a what?
A scalpel. You know, for dissection.
Oh, okay.
You know?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
That's what.
Do you anything for you to add?
I think
anything
do I what?
And add before we move on to
do I have anything
hexes
to add? Well, I would think that this is one of those things that require a bit of practice, because for a lot of people this is kind of their first spell. If you're taking them from the perspective that they're not using any external power sources, any ingredients or anything like that, you're talking about just using their own power, aren't you?
Yeah.
And most of the time when magic's taught to beginners, they tend to kind of make it super complicated to throw them into it. So they talk about hexing rituals and curse rituals and stuff like that. Or they talk about getting the candles and cauldrons and puppets and herbs and things to make it very, very visual. And I know you're talking about the complete opposite. You're saying strip all of that back. And why is it that you take that approach instead of doing the opposite, which is what a lot of people will do and just overcompensate by putting loads and loads and loads of visual kind of stuff in?
So for me, it's keep it simple, stupid. When you're talking about a jinx, this is short power. This is not. It doesn't require a lot. This isn't a curse. This hasn't got to, you know, last a lifetime. This is someone's pissed you off and you want to make their life as uncomfortable in that moment as they've just made yours. So that's when you're going to use a jinx like that. That is very short term, teach a lesson. And the reason you are not going to invest ingredients, hours of thought, your best craftsmanship, crafting the perfect doll to get back on somebody that cut you up in a line. You know, like, why would you waste that kind of time and energy on something so petty? So in those kind of moments, that's already petty enough for you to go and throw a bit of the evil eye at somebody, and push a jinx in somebody's direction. But you know, these are never going to cause major harm.
So you're talking basically the equivalent of just like spitting on someone. It's very, very low level. It's not going to cause any real harm. It's just causing a little bit of disruption. So generating enough energy and sending it someone's way to cause enough disruption. Okay. So Sherry, I think that's Sherry, is it? For a hex to be placed on anyone, the person to do that cast has to be a person of great standing here and in the afterlife. Those sort of people are only found in the jungle. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Okay. I think I follow. I'm not sure I do, though. Because that suggests that the only people with power to do... I think you're mixing up hex with... Because obviously we're going with our own terminology here. So if you're thinking a hex and a curse is the same then that could be where that's coming from, I guess. Or it's a case of you think that a lot of power is required in order to create a hex. Again, that depends on your terminology. But for me, hexes are fairly simple. They don't require a massive amount of energy. If you're wanting to curse an entire bloodline or a person's farm for the next 200 generations, then yes, you're going to probably need a quite extensive amount of power, an anchor in order to make that last beyond your death, and to be able to last that long. So when we get to the kind of big cursey stuff, then we'll touch on that again, I think.
Okay, so this one's outside of the scope of what we're talking about, Chris. How do you rid oneself of a hex in case it's cast upon you? I thought we said we weren't covering that, Chris. I thought we said we're going to put guns in people's hands and not explain how to protect against it. So what are we doing? Are we going to try and give them ideas for how to do stuff and then undo them? Or is that like a part two, or what form do you want to take with this? No,
I think if we explain how they work, the answer should be obvious. Should we do it that way?
Right, because in Chris language, if I put the subtitles in for that, what that means is if you're given the base and you're not smart enough to understand how to undo it, you deserve to die. Did I get that about right, Chris?
That's not what I said. That's not what I said at all.
No, pretty much summed up.
No, I did not.
Yeah, that is reading between the lines, but you know that's what you were really thinking. You're thinking, well, if we put the basics out there, then they can follow along. But there are people at home saying, well, I don't quite understand that. I don't quite understand that. And I'm thinking, well, what he actually means there is he means he's going to make it super basic. So if you're super basic, you should understand super basic. And if you ain't super basic, if you're super basic, you deserve to die. But they don't say, they don't call him the Faustiest witch for nothing.
Okay. What I will say is this: there is a lot of, you'll read a lot out there on things like return to sender spells and hex fixes. And those are the things you need to avoid. At the end of the day, all that fits into the jinx category that Liam's talked about and the hex category are stuff that most types of hexes are not going to get past your basic protections if you're the sort of person that is practicing and then covers themselves properly. The other part is, the only other thing I'm going to say about it, hint wise, a bit more about what we're talking about, is that is somebody packaging up energy and throwing it in your direction, regardless of what it was intended for. I say you should never turn down a free meal. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because I'm not going to tell you how. We'll do protections another time in the future.
Well, we were asked to do transmutation at some point, but we'll probably cover that on the podcast as well, so we can go into detail. So Sherry also says, everyone thinks they can cast harm in some way when they cannot. Believe what you want as far as I'm concerned. Everyone does tend to believe what they want.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure where you go.
Going down on the...
Great, Sherry.
You may have to, but I'm pretty much thinking you're saying that curses are, again, following for... Curses are hard to do, apparently, unless you've got real power. Next.
Okay. A doctor at the moment. I drew a picture and well hope this ping does not last.
I'm not following Kathy. You might have to rephrase that.
Too much like a healing to me. Because if it was a curse you'd be putting pain, they're not taking it away. I don't know. Where are we going with this, Chris? Because unless anyone's got any questions, we're free to actually talk about things and go off on tangents and the like. So what's the next
We were
step?
stepping up to Hex next.
Hex.
Yeah.
So we got from a jinx, which is causing a trouble, basically.
Yeah.
So my idea of a jinx would be, you know, when people say they're having a bad day or a bad week, I think there's a whole song about it on the Friends theme tune. It's not been your day, your week, or month, or even your year. That's the idea of a jinx. If you're making a jinx and they say it's not my day, it's a little jinx. If you're saying it's not my week, slightly bigger. If you're saying it's not my year, that goes up to quite big then. If you're making sure that everyone has someone's having a great amount of trouble for an entire year, then that's going to require more energy and a little bit more doing than just doing that for the day. Kind of logical, I suppose. So, hexing then you want to cover. This idea of a magical punch in the face is really causing damage, isn't it? You're talking about causing damage to the person.
Yeah. So with this, we're kind of talking about, again, this is short-term magic. So this is kind of a...
Your idea of short-term is an entire lifetime, though.
No. Not in this context. Stop making me out to be the bad one. It's only because last week you had all those comments, people scared of you. So yeah, with hexing, with the hexing is we're starting to talk about, again, still immediate mostly with hexes. They are short-term effects, obviously larger than when you use a jinx. So with a hex, it's a step up, like Liam says. It's normally a punch in the face kind of situation. So it might be, you know, magically keying someone's car, giving someone a short-term illness.
You're
anything
not
that
supposed
might...
to laugh when you say that. Why is it whenever you say giving someone a short-term illness, there's a slight chuckle that comes after? You see, this is what makes you a bad person, Chris. The fact you're chuckling isn't just a specific bad person's misfortune, but that there's someone out there that's a suffering and you're chuckling at it. Tell you, it's not very good.
Someone's got to suffer. That's just kind of how the balance works.
We want a nice utility. I forget.
Utopia. You can't even say the word.
I forget the difference between utilitarian and utopia.
So yeah, I've forgotten what I was going to say. Hexes, yeah. So what we're talking about is, like Liam says, it's a punch in the face. It's giving you that kind of, it's again packaging up energy and smashing it into someone. Like, you know, it is about, again, a short-term negative effect, but a step up from a jinx. So this again might be you packaging up enough energy to throw in someone's direction. This you might start to include some basic spell work. This might be that you just kind of you know, grab a few bits of something in order to power the spell if you're wanting a bit more kick than what you can raise. But mostly, I think most hexes are capable of being done by raising enough energy and directing it at somebody. You can go a little bit further if you're kind of like conscious of the fact that they're not magically inclined or psychic. Then obviously you're going to have to prepare yourself for the fact that you're going to not want to leave any kind of magical fingerprints of where you've thrown this energy from in order for someone to redirect back at you or then direct something in yours. We don't need any unnecessarily witch wars over something as simple as a hex. Again, not requiring a massive amount of energy. Again, hexes would not include voodoo dolls and all that kind of puppets, but you know, again, it is packaging up energy and directing it at somebody. So anything else you want to add? Any favorite hexes you want to add?
I got a new favorite TV show that illustrates this point very well, I like to think. It's on Channel 5. I get it on 5 on demand. No, we're not sponsored by Channel 5. We're sponsored by Keep on Chatting Paranormal Network, which you can watch on the Keep on Chatting YouTube channel and on the Keep on Chatting Facebook page. Anyway, this TV show is called Street Fights, right? And it's basically about people getting beaten up and beating other people up. And the street fights caught on television, on CCTV and cameras and that. And I think this illustrates a lot of the points you're making, Chris. Because a hex and jinxes and that, they can be illustrated by this program. So, you know, back at school, when you'd, you know, fill someone's locker with those wind-up frogs, so that when they open the locker, all the wind-up frogs jump out. That's a practical joke, which causes disruption and pisses people off, but it's a practical joke. It's quite low level. That's kind of like the equivalent of a jinxing, yeah? Some practical jokes go quite far, but that's still kind of jinxing. Practical jokes can be very bad, but it is still kind of jinxing, trouble causing and the like. Hexing is a lot like fighting. So like the equivalent of, I think, a lot of the evil eye type stuff is like when you see on the fighting TV shows, you've got one guy or one girl go up to another one and push them. And the magical equivalent of that is sending a pretty low level hex out to get them. And then that return back to sender is when they go and push them back, you know?
Yeah.
Like style of fight. Like lads down at the city centre on a Friday and Saturday night. They get all tough, having their beers and that, and then one person doesn't like the other, so they push them, and then the other one pushes back. Really what we're talking about with the hexing, I think, is someone going and knocking someone out with a punch. So they're not dead, but there's definitely damage, and when they wake up, they're going to have a shiner, possibly a broken nose. Maybe got mugged as well. So this is a bit more serious, isn't it? The hexing, Chris. This is kind of damage, and that will mend. You know, that will mend that punch in the face, the nose, and all that. It will mend. It will get better. But you know, when you're talking curses, can a hex turn into a curse? Because if I knocked someone out and then I don't know, they fell over and then broke their neck, damage to the spinal cord, and then are paraplegic, that's a curse, I suppose, isn't it? Because you've cursed them with, you've caused so much damage that it's kind of permanent.
Yeah, I suppose.
So I think people can get carried away with
accidental cursing.
I think that jinxes can end up, you can get super carried away and go overboard, and then they can turn into kind of more hexes, and hexes can get, you know, a bit overboard and then turn into curses, really. Because that paraplegic, then you've got to think about the other people that are involved. So what about their family and the people that love them? They're kind of cursed with the fact that they've got to see their family member go through that and maybe help them out and stuff like that. So I'm kind of thinking, well, actually, there are levels with this, but it's not as clean cut. We try to categorize things from a teaching perspective, but it's the damage that's caused, I think, a lot of the time. Let's see what Sherry says. Simply don't give a toss about someone else's words in anger, mean they can't leave any sort of residue of foul words of harm. Simply do not accept. Simply don't give a toss about someone else's words in anger, mean they can't leave any sort of residue. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people do have a tendency to care too much about what other people think. I see that quite a lot. I see people stewing over stuff that someone said that they don't even know. And particularly nowadays, in the age of kind of social media, you hear a lot of people about, you know, getting trolled or trolling others. You get people that are trolling and being horrible to people and that having an effect. And then you get people which some random person that doesn't even have a profile name or picture says some horrible stuff about you, and you kind of take it on board. So, yeah, I think that you shouldn't really give a toss about what a lot of other people say about you, because you can't please everyone. What else have we got? Never own another's words, let it run off your back. Yeah, I think I agree with that. Well done. I think we're both on the same page anyway, Sherry. So yeah, so where else are we going with this then?
So it's then kind of making the crossover to curses, I guess. So,
okay, curses.
You know, given finishing off what you just said with the, obviously there's the accidental ones that kind of where you can overpower something and you then cause an effect you're not prepared for. Those sort of ones. But I think generally speaking, curses are ones that require time and energy and planning. Curses aren't something you kind of do off the cuff. Generally speaking, I'm not going to speak to myself, but but you know, generally speaking, but generally speaking, curses are ones that require effort and larger amounts of energy. And the reason for that is curses tend to be the kind of longer term negative spell casting. So those are the ones we're kind of lumping together. Semi to permanent.
Semi-permanent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then approaches.
Sorry, I thought you were going to make a comment. Go on.
I was just going to say we could talk about approaches to these things, both modern times and kind of old-fashioned times, traditionally and classically, because I see a lot of in the classical kind of traditions and throughout history, the idea of getting some other person or thing to do it for you, hence the curse tablets and all of that you tend to say. So let's get a spirit to do it all for me. Let's get a spirit to do the dirty work for me. Now, comparing and contrasting that method where you're calling on a spirit and maybe bargaining them or paying them off or something like that to do something for you, causing trouble, what would be the approach that you take? How would you make that decision in terms of whether, as a magical practitioner, you do it yourself or you get something else to do it? Because from my understanding, classically, when you get that, it would be the mundanes, the people that weren't really practicing a lot of magic. So what they do is they kind of hear the superstition, or they know that if I etch this and chuck it in a well, that there's a spirit of the well that's going to cause some trouble or something, or I can get Hermes to go and cause them bad tidings or something like that, you know. But the magical practitioner, how do they make their decisions, do you think?
Well, the difference, I think, is kind of what level of power you're able to wield is what these will often come down to. So for the mundane, they don't think they're necessarily capable of it. Therefore, you know, subcontracting deity to carry out your vengeance makes sense at that point, because you're kind of like, okay, I don't have the power to do it. I feel powerless to the situation. I'll get somebody else to do it for me. You know, that's essentially magical hitman. So with those, you know, curse tablets there, and quite easily talking about, those are petition works, often where you are paid kind of way for the work to be carried out. So again, magical hitman, hashtag. But the moving on from that, when you get to the magical practitioner, that then becomes a question of power. So it is, am I capable of raising enough energy to make this happen? Now, as we're talking about, you know, semi-permanent to permanent, to end of one lifetime to impacting multiple, depending on what level we're talking about, will depend on, you know, you having to figure out, do you have enough power to do it yourself? Do you need somebody else to get involved? Does it require a whole coven of people? Are you going to subcontract a deity to come and do it? You know, it really does depend on what you think is required, and also, to a certain extent, what level of power is deserved, as in kind of like how you choose to react to that said situation. So, you know, someone scratched your car, you're not necessarily going to curse their family into a massive blood curse for the rest of 30 generations. Like, you know, like that, it's got to be eye for an eye kind of situation, surely. Not jumping straight to, you
Why,
know,
Chris?
he cut me
up
in the traffic. He cut me up in the traffic, so I'm going to sacrifice his firstborn.
No, Chris, that is not of equal stature, is it? They cut you up, that's not a problem, you know, so you can't go doing this. Who makes up these rules, Chris, this morality that you speak of?
Well, it's of what you feel is an eye for an eye. You know, some people are prissy little princesses, so they feel like anything that happens to them needs to be met with full force. I don't think that's necessarily true.
Right. I think that is also like the Channel 5 program that I like about Fighting Again, because I think that some people, right, with the hexes, I see this because I get the mundanes asking me, can you hex this person? Can you hex it? I'll show you how to do it. Oh no, I don't want to do it. You do it. It's either people are scared of the repercussions of if they did manage to beat someone up, that some law enforcement officer, police is going to come after them and look them up, or they're scared that the person that they're going to go and punch is actually going to turn around and say, you know, I barely felt that, and then knock them out. So they're scared of repercussions, I find. They're either scared that there's going to be some kind of magical repercussions, or they're scared that, you know, they've bitten off more than they can chew, and the guy's just going to turn around that they smacked on the back and then knock them out. So perhaps they go to some of these spirits and that because they think, big bad spirit, the spirit can take the lump and it's not really me that's doing the damage. I just egged them on. Honestly, officer, I just said go and beat him up. I never threw the first punch. I just told him to throw the first punch, officer. That's nowhere near as bad as throwing the punch. I just said to do it. I didn't do it. Or it could be the case of, well, the big bad spirit that I'm asking is bigger than the person that I'm getting them to curse. Therefore, they won't be able to get that person. Like the people that are in schools, like, I'm going to get my brother on you because my brother is a year above us. I'm going to get my brother on you. Of course, if they're picking on an advanced witch, not only do they knock out the person, but they knock out the older brother as well. But we're not supposed to go into that, are we, Chris? Because we got another question. Lauren says, when you're done talking about curses, how can we ever be done talking about curses? Come on. Can you talk about links? This was a big help to me a while back to consider if the link is strong enough. Okay, so linking too, because you got the idea and concept of, okay, you know what you want to happen. How do you get the energy to the person to interact with? That punch starts off here and then ends up in their face. But that in-between bit, that's kind of the important bit that's often misunderstood and often breezed over, like we're doing now.
So yeah, with that one, all I'm going to add is kind of just saying it's again down to power and connection. So it's the easiest answer is yes, quantum intelligence. Go look at physics. But yeah, it comes down to
you are, Chris. You're supposed to be a mentor. This isn't selling our mentorship program, you know. If you're just gonna say, what's that your question? Go look at a physics book. That's not what they want here, Chris. They want the nitty gritty. They want the serious stuff. They want you to put some effort in.
But also, if I'm too good on here, then they won't pay for the extras. Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, but they need to know that you're worth paying for. Because they need to know whether to spend £3 on you or whether to spend £3 on a second-hand physics book.
Okay. I think they'll spend a bit more than £3 on a second.
Or whether they can just go on Witch Talk for free.
Witch Talk. Okay. I will answer the question somewhat. So what Lauren is trying to get at, I think, is obviously considering when you are spell crafting. So with this, it could be that you are, using a poppet of some description, or even if you're not, how are you getting that package of energy, however you are building it, how are you getting it to the person that you want to curse?
Royal
with that part.
Because they're not allowed to open the parcels, are they? It's against the law or something. And if you go with Hermes, then it probably won't bother showing up, will it? No.
But yeah, so the point of it is creating a link between you and, or not necessarily you, but the energy that you're wanting to throw and the intended target. So, the link needs to be strong enough for you to be able to throw that amount of energy down it. So, if you're really going for a blood for the rest of, can you fit that down, the tiny link you made just by casting the evil eye at somebody? Is that enough of a connection for you to do so? In which case, do you need a stronger link? So that might be that you need to use biologicals, or you might need to, get hold of photograph off Facebook, or whatever it is that it allows you to make that connection. But it needs to be a strong enough connection for the energy to get down. And then Lauren's added another one. One of us must have made some comment about a kinked toe at some point. Well, that sounds more like you than me.
Kinked toes is a really good idea, actually. Well done, Lauren. If you said we said that, then I'll give myself a pat on the back. You give yourself a pat on the back, Chris, because I think that's quite a good way of explaining it. You know,
is that if there is not a clear enough path, then obviously, yeah, kinked hose. You figure that out. Nice, there's nice visual there. I think I'm only on half time today. Have you noticed?
Bloody hell. We're 45 minutes in and we ain't said a thing. Now that's a cult mentoring. An hour lecture and you don't say anything. It's just like them witch books. Oh. Sherry, I have my witch books and one potions book that I will never use. I believe more in spirit and superpowers. That's enough for me. Yes. A lot of books are pretty terrible, Sherry, especially the one with the crescent moon logo. That publishing company don't have to put out some shite, I tell you. Well,
we said we weren't going to start. Well, no, you're not wrong. But the yeah, we got to be careful about saying things like that. Remember, we were talking about blacklists earlier today.
In my correct opinion, okay, I can't be sued for that because it's my opinion.
Okay.
At least I think that's how it works. I don't know.
Okay.
I think Llewellyn is an American company, and so they do have some rather strange rules over there.
But yeah, at the end of the day, you do you, Sherry. But what we're pointing out is obviously that how you create that work is entirely going to be based on what you understand, how you want to inflict a curse on somebody else, and have you got enough power to make that happen. So, you know, if you don't, lots of people will make that shortfall up. Spirit and superpowers, as described. So, but the other reason for kind of subcontracting out the problem is often also about anonymity. So particularly if you're throwing something at somebody that might be able to find out and attempt to throw back, you're starting to then consider, you know, is it safer to go through a third party in order to avoid backfire or problems with it. The other part is giving the work and subtracting the work out to a spirit that is going to last longer than you, in the grand scheme of things, is where things start to put safeguards in that if anything happens to you, the curse still continues. I personally like to attach curses to living things, because that is often a better way to do it. You know, attaching it to the good old oak tree.
So does that mean,
unlikely to be cut down?
Does that mean that deforestation is actually a good thing because all those curses you put in centuries past are now breaking? No, you know me. Oh. My safeties have always got an extra safety and a safety on top of that. So there's no getting out of mine. I would never inflict one on another in the first place because it's back like a boomerang.
Oh, that sounds like some Wiccan shit.
It sounds a little new agey. I don't know how they're quite put in that. Boomerangs are hunting devices, aren't they?
Oh, I do like a boomerang.
I used to have a boomerang.
My aim's shocking, so I can't throw at those things.
I once threw it and it did not come back. It was that day I knew.
Was it broken?
It was that day I knew I'd defeated karma. There's a joke in there somewhere. So what do you want to talk about for the last 10 minutes then, Chris? Because this is about being naughty, isn't it? Being naughty. Do you want to share some stories of being naughty? Like that time you cursed all the rose quartz crystals in Glastonbury?
That's not a curse. You're using the wrong part of your... your ordering
Jinx
system there.
stuff? Well, I don't know. It depends
maybe
on how much energy you put.
But I don't think they're far enough. I didn't put enough thought and process in for it to be a curse.
I mean, all I know is that 1 minute you are jinxed, the rose quartz crystal, and then a coach gets off full of Chinese tourists, and then COVID happens. I mean, I don't know.
Nice try, Liam.
Is that a jinx, or is that a curse? Or is that
nice
a hex?
try, Liam.
The viewers can decide. Any suggested books that are not too over the edge? I have to say no. Pretty much all books that I've read on witchcraft are absolute shite. I cannot recommend any books off the top of my head in regards to cursing and hexing. There are books on the subject, but I don't find them to be very good. Bit like what Sherry said. She got books, and
if you don't use them,
not great.
Not good enough.
So no, sorry, I can't give any book recommendations. I don't know about you, Chris. Can you?
It's tricky. I think particularly with cursing, and these kinds of magics, I find the best source of inspiration is fairy tale and folklore, and that will give you ways of kind of manipulating the story. Give you a storyline in which to follow. Like, I think those parts give you enough idea about how to go about the actual execution. So not the ingredients; those things will come to you in the way that you'll know as you start to practice how far you can push your energy. So you're not going to. No one starts necessarily with a you're going to start at jinx and you're going to kind of work your way up if you're going to go down that kind of pathway. But you are testing your output and seeing how far you can push that energy. You're not going to go straight to a blood curse. You're going to have known and been able to gauge what kind of level energy output you've got first before you start to consider the big and bite off more than you can chew. And obviously, I think inspiration wise for how to, ideas for what to do, cursing someone to slumber until true love's kiss comes, or quote unquote rapist in the woods. You kind of those are the questions you've got to ask about. Is that an effective way of cursing somebody? Would you not just have offed them?
So you're saying kind of go for inspiration and that? Because I thought that your approach, I thought you was going to say that you'd look no further than your own vindictive nature for inspiration for curses of the life. But I didn't know that you'd crack out a fairy folklore kind of thing.
Well, not everyone's as much of a psychopath or Fausty as I am. So, some people need some suggestions. But yeah, I don't think there are any particularly good curses out there. You'll get ideas from stories better than you will from any kind of book on the matter. You've also got to remember, whenever you read a book about witchcraft, it's written by that particular person's perspective. So magic doesn't necessarily is a lot more organic than that. Chemistry. If it was chemistry, there'd be books about it written in the New Scientist journal, because they'd be able to go, if you add eye of newt to toe of frog, that this will then actually happen. If they worked like cooking, we'd all be doing it. So, it is a case of you understanding what ingredients you require in order to perform magic. So, someone else's cookbook isn't necessarily going to work for you. It might give you ideas, but it isn't necessarily going to work exactly that somebody else has written it, because that's based on their understanding, their connotations, and how their brain works. So,
I have a spreadsheet.
For curses?
Well, I found this thing, right? It's a thing that people say and do, right? Whenever someone says, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, I pay attention immediately. And then that tends to go on my I wouldn't do that to my worst enemy spreadsheet, which is where I get my inspiration from. So whenever someone undergoes something horrific and they say, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, I first say, are you sure about that? And the next I say, what if you did that to Hitler? And if they still say no, I think, this is something so bad, I've got to put this and use this to my advantage. So then it goes on the spreadsheet. Yeah. Show you that'll tell you enough. All you need to know about me.
No. Me, I tend to go to mythology. Because I try to remember how I did it last time.
Right.
But that's normally, you know, because that's like looking at Cliff Notes. You know, those books that cheat your way through literature.
Yeah, I know. But if Yahweh kept flooding the universe, flooding the world, it would be kind of like boring, though, wouldn't it? You don't want to keep rehashing the same old stuff.
I suppose.
You know?
I suppose.
It's like, oh look, we're all dying in a flood again. Oh, come on! Can't you come up with something new? Oh, locusts, locusts. Okay. Because that's how people adapt, Chris. You've got to remember that. That's how people adapt. Right. Questions and possibly statements. Read what you can, but work with your own vibrations.
Vibrations.
Vibrations. Michelle says, if you hex or curse, is it better to use your own energy, ask a deity, or work with others? If you use your energy, are you tied to the victim? Interesting. I suppose it depends on your approach, doesn't it? And it depends on what the enemy, essentially, we'll call them.
How big the curse is and what the enemy is.
The enemy and the enemy's friends, what is their ability? Is it their ability to be able to use that link you've created and work through it, send stuff back and stuff, or are they not capable of doing that? If they are capable of doing it, are you capable of blocking it? You know? Yeah. So it's going to depend a lot on your abilities. I think...
And how big what you're asking for is.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what we'd normally suggest with most people, because a lot of people tend to get halfway through a hexing kind of project and lose interest. I tend to find, because I find that a lot of hexing, that type of magic for a lot of people, is kind of because they're really, really angry. And I normally try and get...
Anger comes and goes.
I try to get people that are really interested in that kind of work to see it kind of as therapy to a certain extent. Because if you've got a lot of pent up rage and frustration, you should be utilizing that as an energy source. Very often, as the energy dies down, is because obviously you're not mustering up the anger in that. And as your anger subsides, pain subsides, so will the curse or hex or jinx, which I kind of find quite poetic in a way, because if someone's wronged you, it'll only be when you can truly forgive them that you can kind of let go and they stop suffering. And if you don't stop suffering,
cathartic,
then they don't stop suffering. So, you know.
To answer the second part, though, yes, to a certain extent, yes. All magic will leave some kind of signature. It's whether or not the necessary people are capable of seeing it. So, you know, obviously we would obviously condone masking up when you do that kind of work. So you disguise where that link is coming to and from. But yes, to a certain extent, there is a link. How useful that link is will depend on how good you are at actually creating and crafting spell work. And that's the sort of stuff that comes best with practice of being, one, either able to disguise the link that you're doing, or like was it Lauren asking earlier before about how big a spell you can get through a tiny link that's unnoticeable. If those sorts of work start,
generally it's where you're targeting. You target in a place they're incapable of feeling.
Yeah. So,
or seeing.
You know, target their astral body and let it filter its way down, because surprising number of people are not aware of their astral body. So, you know, if you're going to link it to a part of them that they can't see, then that tends to work better in your favor. But yes, I hope that answers your question, Michelle.
It's like money laundering, Michelle, you see. If you're really good at money laundering, then it doesn't matter if you've got forensic accountants. If you're better at money laundering than those people, then you can hide where all the money's going. But if you're not very good at money laundering, you won't be very good at this hiding your spell work and the like. I'm very good at hiding spell work and money laundering, because it's the same process at the end of the day. It's following the energy. Follow the money. Where does the money go? It goes to some offshore bank account. Let's find out what's behind that offshore bank account. There's another one and another one and another one. Different countries. How easy is it for that person to go back? You know, almost like a VPN as well for you computer nerds out there. VPN.
Yeah.
So what we got next? We've got I believe you are, yes, linked to that person in the realm. So yeah, it depends on their ability really, and how many blockades and clever ways of tricking them you put in the way in order to get, you know, stop them from working backwards. I would say one thing, and that is much like a punch. Remember, hexing, you generally want them to know. Okay, so a punch in the face. You're doing that because you want them to know you've just beaten them up often, okay? Not really something that you do slyly, I would say. I think that if you wanted rid of someone, the sly way to do it's poison and assassination, isn't it? Whereas if you're going for the
not a hex or a curse,
a lot of the in-your-face approach, you don't want that link to be going to someone else. You would probably want to keep that link there so that they know it's you. You just want to be strong enough to withstand whatever they do back to you.
Yeah.
Like boxing, I suppose. Kathy says something. Can you write your hex curse, then burn it in a cauldron and Viola gone?
Voila.
That's an approach. Will that necessarily work? Won't necessarily work now. Ask yourself how it does work. How writing your hex or curse and burning it in a cauldron, how does that work? Ask yourself that. If you don't know how it works, then it probably won't work. And then if you look at the process of how that would work, and then you see, okay, what are the limitations of that? Okay. If some powerful spirit or something like that is decided to just pick on you until the ends of you or time, whichever comes first, probably be you, then writing their name or something on a piece of paper and burning a cauldron probably not going to be enough to deal with that. If someone's just attached a minor jinx to you, then, you know, if you can utilize that kind of form of representational magic and sympathetic magic, then maybe you are able to use that as a template or a form to remove it. But if I got 100 people and did the same hex or curse or jinx on 100 people, and it being a low level one, and then got every single one of those people to write it down on a piece of paper and burn it in a cauldron, some of them, if they've got half a clue about magic, will be able to undo it because it's a low level one, low level jinx curse. Easy to undo. Others won't be able to. So, you know.
Also about the fact that obviously we talk, which is what we're looking at, is the physical isn't just one part to think about. So, you know, writing down, write it down at all, in which case then it isn't there for it to be destroyed in the physical, but it's still going to have a magical signature. So, you know, in terms of tracking and finding and figuring that out, those are all going to be connected to the work that's done, the energy signature of it. So.
We are 4 minutes, well, 5 minutes over, so we will have to call it a day now. I'm not entirely sure what the next episodes will be, but you can stay tuned, and of course we will post this in the Witchcraft Live Facebook group. There we go. So that's it. Goodbye, everyone.
If you're tired of all the neo-pagan claptrap that's on the internet and want to see some real witchcraft, please subscribe to the Thoth TV YouTube channel. If you really want to kick things up a notch, try clicking the No Holds Barred podcast link.